If you're trying to become a SOC analyst, network analysis is one of those skills that not many people have, unfortunately. And many people get pretty intimidated when presented with a PCAP, a packet capture. I know this because, well, I was the same way when I first started. This is why I wanted to create this video so we can go over another exercise of investigating PCAPs. If you haven't already, I would recommend you watch my first video on investigating PCAPs as I will be using the same settings in Wireshark from that video. Also, I created a SOC roadmap video, and in that video, I provided you with some labs to complete to obtain the skills required to become a SOC analyst. This lab that we will go over today is one of the labs that I listed, titled Hawkeye, under Network Analysis. Let's get started. Start by heading over to Cyber Defenders and create an account if you haven't already. Once you log in, you want to select Blue Yard Labs and then go over to Practice. And then you want to look for the lab called Hawkeye, or we can go ahead and search that up by typing in Hawk and I, and at the bottom, we see Hawkeye. Let's go ahead and click on that. You will see the platform rules if this is your first time using Cyber Defenders. We can click on Accept and Proceed. And let's head over to Details. Then when we scroll down, we are given a scenario. The scenario is an accountant at your organization received an email regarding an invoice with a download link. Suspicious network traffic was observed shortly after opening the email. As a SOC analyst, investigate the network trace and analyze exfiltration attempts. Now, with the tools provided, this is what we can use to go ahead and analyze this PCAP. In our case, I am going to be only utilizing Wireshark and maybe even VirusTotal. And from this scenario, we can already guess that there is going to be some sort of exfiltration attempt, maybe via email. Now let's join the lab and then download lab files. You'll get a warning here that just says that, hey, this is real malware, so just please be careful and make sure that you utilize a virtual machine just in case. Once the file is finished downloading, we'll have to extract the PCAP using the password cyberdefenders.org, all lowercase. I'll right click this and click on extract all, and then I'll type in the password cyberdefenders.org. If for whatever reason you forget the password, you can find the password on the site itself. It will be listed right here. If you have Wireshark installed, you should see a PCAP icon that we can just double click. Now again, I did mention this previously, but before I dig into this PCAP, if you haven't seen my previous video on how to investigate PCAPs, I highly recommend you watch that first, as I'll be using the same Wireshark settings. Let's first start off with our statistics to see the duration of the capture. So we'll click on Statistics, click on Capture File Properties. If we look at the time elapsed, we can see that it took around an hour and 3 minutes, where the first packet was in 2019, April 10th, 2037-07, which is 8:37 p.m. UTC time. And the last packet was up until 21:40-48, which is 9:40 p.m. The next thing we want to do is take a look at the protocol hierarchy. And to do that, we click on Statistics, click on Protocol Hierarchy, and we see a bunch of protocols here. Now there is SMB, SMTP, Kerberos, HTTP, and many, many more. Let's go ahead and close that out and put that in our notes. And then we'll see the top talkers. Let's take a look at that by clicking on Statistics and click on Conversations. Click on the IPv4 tab because we want to see the top talkers for IPv4 addresses. And then I'll sort it by bytes. At the very top, we see an external IP address which could be of interest, and that is 217.182.138.150. So let's take note of that, and also let's track the top 3 IPs. So that external IP, the 10.4.10.4, and 23.229.162.69. Because these could be of interest. Next is the TCP tab. I'm going to sort it by bytes, just like what I did before. And we do see some port 80 traffic, which is HTTP, or should be HTTP. That's not always the case, but typically it is. And then we see 445, which is SMB and HTTPS. And then we also see SMTP traffic on port 587. So this is probably our mail server. The 23.229.162.69 is likely the mail server. Scrolling a little bit down, we see LDAP and Kerberos as well. And then I'll head over to UDP next, sort it by bytes again, and we see some multicast traffic with NetBIOS, NTP, DNS, DHCP, and many more. Go ahead and close that out. As a starting point, I am interested in our top talker, so let's go ahead and filter for that. I'll type in ip.addr equals, and then I'll type in the external IP address of 217.182.138.150, and then I'll hit enter. We see that on packet number 210, which is this one right here, there is a HTTP packet that occurred on 2037.54. Let's follow it by right-clicking it and click on Follow HTTP Stream. Now, inside of this packet, we do see a binary being downloaded, as we can tell by the file header of MZ and the content type of application/x-ms download. Now, we can extract this file later and perform some additional OSINT, open source intelligence, to hopefully get some additional context into what this file might be. But before we do that, let's determine how our internal IP address communicated with this external IP. So I'll go ahead and close this out. Let's take a look at the first packet, which is 207. We want to see what happened prior to this packet. So let's go ahead and remove the TCP stream filter and hit enter. Looking at packet 206, we see a DNS response from our server back to our internal IP of .132. Now, if we were to just scroll over just a little bit, we can see that there was a standard query response for the domain of proforma-invoices.com. This could be the suspicious download link that was hinted in the scenario. So let's keep note of this domain. Scrolling up just a little bit, we do see some SMB traffic. I am interested in the SMTP traffic because we know that this protocol exists, and the scenario specifically mentioned email. So let's click on the filter and then type in SMTP and hit enter. Here we see a lot of SMTP traffic that begins on 20:38:16, which again, that is 8:38 p.m. with the first packet being 31:75. If you recall, the first activity with our top talker of 217.182.138.150 started on packet number 207. So this SMTP traffic happened afterwards. Looking back at our scenario, the accountant received the email regarding an invoice with a download link. And unfortunately, this PCAP does not seem to contain that email based on our search, but that is okay. We will instead assume that the link was proforma-invoices.com, which was the domain that our internal IP requested and got a response from. Let's go ahead and right-click the first packet of 3175 and then click on Follow and then select TCP Stream. We can see that the host name of the mail server is this, secureserver.net, and the software version of XM4.91. We could also see that our client machine is Beijing-5CD1-PC with a public IP of 173.66.146.112. There is an authentication attempt using the user and password. Now, these are likely encoded using base64, and one quick way to tell is looking at the padding at the end. If you happen to see equal signs, that could be base64. But do keep in mind that even if you do see an equal sign at the end, it doesn't always mean it is base64, but you can always try and decode it. To decode this, I'll go ahead and copy this base64 logon, and then we will head over to CyberChef, which is a pretty cool tool that you should have in your toolkit. So over in CyberChef, I'll go ahead and paste in that username. And then from the left, I'll select from base64 as I want to decode this text. So I'll just go ahead and double click it. And at the bottom of the output, we can see that the username is sales.del@macwinlogistics.in. Now let's go ahead and do the same for the password. So I will select the password and copy it. Then I'll paste it in CyberChef. And I see that the password is sales with a capital S at 23. This is likely the account of our attacker, so we can perform some OSINT on the domain of our attacker. Put that in our notes, and that is an activity that we can do later. Let's take a look at the subject as well, as I do notice that this is encoded with base64. So So I'll copy the subject up to the question mark, as typically a question mark represents something else. And then I'll paste that in, and then we see our subject of Hawkeye keylogger-reborn v9-password logs. So we know that this is already a bad day. It appears that our user of Roman.McGuire was likely the victim, or the user account for Beijing-VCD1-PC, and probably Roman's passwords were stolen based on the subject line here. Now let's go back over to our PCAP and look at the content itself. And as we can see, it is also encoded using base64. Another quick way of telling if it is encoded using base64 is looking at the context transfer encoding. It literally tells you that, hey, it is encoded using base64. So let's go ahead and copy out the contents, head back over into CyberChef and paste that in, and look at that. Nice. So we see a username as roman.mcguire@aol.com. I don't know when was the last time I saw aol.com, but this is it. And we see password, pretty decent, right? Password strength is very strong. Ooh, Bank of America, look at that. Using the same password. Let's not do that, yeah? And then we see Outlook, and here it is, Pizza Jukebox. I'm assuming this is the company, and the same password. Don't reuse the same password. Make sure you use a password manager. That's why we got to use those. Now, looking at the contents, we do know that it scraped all of the passwords stored on Roman's computer, and these contents were apparently sent on 2038-16, so 8/38/16. Let's filter for SMTP and see when is the last activity. So let's scroll all the way down, and the last activity happened on 21/40/04. That is 9:40 p.m. UTC time. I'll go ahead and right-click that, click on follow, TCP stream. And the reason why I'm doing this is I want to see if any additional files had been exfiltrated. Now I'll copy the contents here and head back over to CyberChef to see if maybe there's something different. And by the looks of it, it seems to be the same. There are 3 passwords here, or 3 credentials. Now, I guess the next thing we can do is export the file that we found in the beginning and generate a file hash on it to perform some additional OSINT. So let's go ahead and do that. And now that I think about it actually, before we export the file, we will likely need to disable Defender just in case it does detect the malware and block it. So I'll go ahead and disable Defender first. Click on Manage Settings, and then I'll disable Real-Time Protection. And if you are following along, this is a good time to remind you again to make sure that you're using a virtual machine, because mistakes do happen and sometimes we do silly things. So let's click on File, Export Objects, and click on HTTP. And then we want to look for the domain performa-invoices. And this is it, tkraw_protected99.exe. That sounds like a legitimate file name. Let's go ahead and select Save. And I'll save this with the extension of .malware. Again, we do make mistakes and we do sometimes execute things we don't want to. Now this is also interesting. We also see bot.whatismyipaddress.com happening quite frequently. This gives me an idea that maybe, just maybe, that once executing this malware or this executable, it makes a scheduled query out to whatismyip to determine, hey, if my IP changed, at least now I know. So now that we have our file downloaded, let's open up PowerShell, and then I will type in get-file hash, and then type in our file of interest, and that is our SHA-256 hash. So let's go ahead and copy that out, and we'll use the best tool ever, which is VirusTotal. Click on search, and then I'll paste in our file hash that we generated. And look at that, that is a super safe file with 57 vendors detected as Trojan. AutoIT/Gen8 is the popular threat label. And the threat category is Trojan, family label as AutoIT, Gen8, and Hawkeye. We see 15 plus comments under the community, so let's go ahead and click on that. And scrolling down, we see 16 comments. Let's see, verdict malicious. Okay, malicious, yeah. Malicious, okay, yeah, that's good to know. Let's scroll back up and then select relations. I want to take a look at the contacted domains and look at that. And this is the reason why. I wanted to know if this executable was responsible for querying what is my IP address? Because if you recall, under the Wireshark export, we see a bunch of scheduled, or at least I assume it's a scheduled query outbound to whatismyipaddress.com. And looking at VirusTotal, we can tell that it does actually contact the domain bot.whatismyipaddress.com. So this confirms my assumption that this executable does indeed call out to that domain. If we click on details, we can take a look at the creation time of this malware, which is over here. And the creation time of the malware was back on 2019, April 10th at 4:43 UTC time, which was on the same day our accountant, or at least this accountant, reported this activity. Next, let's start performing some open source intelligence on the top talker IP and domain. We'll start off with the IP address of 217.182.138.150. I'll be using abuse IP DB. We can see that the ISP, the Internet Service Provider, is OVH SAS with the usage type of a data center, web hosting, and transit. It is also located in the country of France. Abuse IP DB did not find this IP in their database. Now, if we were to look at VirusTotal, we can see that 4 vendors had flagged this as malicious. Next, we'll take a look at the domain itself, proforma-invoices.com. For this, I'll use a whois lookup by domain tools, and then I'll paste in the domain and hit search. And we see that proforma-invoices.com is for sale. So unfortunately, with a free account, we cannot see the history of this domain, but we can see 2 changes on 2 unique IP addresses over 5 years. Maybe something to note. Back in VirusTotal, I'll do the same. And we can see 12 vendors reported this as malicious and some as phishing. The next thing I want to take a look at is the email domain from the attacker. If you recall, their email address was sales.del@macwinlogistics.in. So I'll go ahead and type in macwinlogistics.in and perform some OSINT on that. So there's no reports on VirusTotal, but there's at least 10 detected files communicating with this domain. And scrolling down, we do see some Hawkeye write-ups. Next, I'll utilize whois lookup from domain tools. And we can see that this domain is for sale as well, similar to the other one. Now we can start building our findings and report it to whoever needs to know. On April 10th, 2019 at 20:37:54 UTC time, the user had accessed the site proforma-invoices.com and requested the file named tkraw_protected99.exe. Based on open source intelligence, this file is classified as a Trojan with a malware label of Hawkeye. Hawkeye is a malware family that is known for its keylogger capabilities. Hawkeye is usually delivered via phishing, and this file is known to query a site called whatismyipaddress.com. And evidence shows that the host Beijing-5CD1-PC was seen querying the site whatismyipaddress.com at 20:38:15. Immediately, there was communication towards a mail server at 23.229.162.69, which an account of sales.del@macwinlogistics.in was used to authenticate. At 20:38:16, contents containing passwords related to Roman McGuire were seen being sent to the email address of sales.del@macwinlogistics.in. The same content containing passwords was sent again to the same email at 21:38:43. And the last mail activity occurred on 21:40:04. Based on our evidence, the total duration of compromise appears to be between 20:37:54 to 21:40:04, which is 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 10 seconds. It is important to take a step back and recap your investigations every now and then, especially if you are performing an investigation that involves multiple machines, because it can get pretty overwhelming, especially if you don't take any notes. Now, let's finish this up by completing the questions on Cyber Defenders. How many packets does the capture have? We can do this by going over to Wireshark, go into statistics, capture file properties, and then under packets captured, we see 4003. So the answer to this would be 4003. At what time was the first packet captured? So again, we can go back into our capture file properties and look under the first packet. This is the time that we want to copy. And just looking at the format at the very end, it has 3 characters. So I'm assuming it is wanting to include UTC, the time zone. What is the duration of the capture? Head back over to the file properties and we see the duration of 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 41 seconds. Copy that, paste that in there. What is the most active computer at the link level? Link level is layer 2, so your MAC address. We can get this information by clicking on statistics, conversations, and then we can copy the value of address A. I'll paste that in. Manufacturer of the NIC of the most active system at the link layer. Now, if we look at our layer 2 address, you want to take the first 3 bytes of the MAC address, which in this case is 000802, and then search up Wireshark OUI, as this will provide you with a lookup to see what the vendor is for this NIC. And then we see that it's Hewlett Packard, aka HP. And it seems that the format wants a dash, so I'll type in a dash. Where is the headquarter of the company that manufactured the NIC of the most active computer at the link level? So I'll just type in Hewlett Packard and I'll type in headquarters. We see the company headquartered in Palo Alto, California. So that is likely the answer here, Palo Alto. Question number 7. The organization works with private addressing and netmask of /24. How many computers in the organization are involved in the capture? We can find this out by clicking on statistics, click on endpoints, go over to IPv4, and then I'll sort it by address just to make sure all of the internal private IP addresses are at the top. And we can see that there is a 10.4.10.2. So this is likely 1.4, 2.132, so 3. And then we see a .255, and this is a broadcast address, so that will not count. So I am going to say that there are 3 hosts, or at least 3 computers in this case. And that is correct. Nice. What is the name of the most active computer at the network level? If you recall, when we followed the SMTP traffic, we saw that the host name was Beijing-something. Beijing-5CD1-PC. So I'll go ahead and paste that in there. What is the IP of the organization's DNS server? To find this answer, we can go ahead and search up and filter DNS. And we want to look at the responses, which in this case is responding from the source port of 53. And we can see that this traffic here is responding to 132, which is our internal IP. So we can infer that 10.4.10.4 is our DNS server. 10.4.10.4. What domain is the victim asking about in packet 204? Well, let's go ahead and check that out. I'll remove DNS and look at 204. So this is the packet 204. And then scrolling right a bit, we see that it is querying proforma-invoices.com. Proforma-invoices.com. Beautiful. Question 11. What is the IP of the domain in the previous question? Now, if we see the response from that DNS, we can just expand answers. And then we see the address of 217.182.138.150. So that is going to be the IP address of our domain of interest. Question number 12. Indicate the country to which the IP in the previous section belongs. Now, we did some OSINT earlier and we found out that this was located in France. What operating system does the victim's computer run on? Ooh, this one's interesting. So how to find this is we can use user agents. And to find that, we got to look for HTTP traffic. So we can just go ahead and filter for HTTP, right click, follow HTTP stream. And now we'll look at the host request. So what is it requesting to the server? And that we can see that it's using a user agent of Mozilla /4.0. And of course, user agents can be spoofed. But in this case, I don't think it will go that far. we can see that it's using Windows NT 6.1. Copy that, and I'll paste that as the answer. Now you can go ahead and do some searches on Google for Windows NT 6.1, and just to see what operating system that is. So if I do a Control F, NT 6.1, I see that it is under Windows 7, and we also have 3 more values here. So Windows Server 2008 R2 and Windows Multipoint Server 2010 and 2011. What is the name of the malicious file downloaded by the accountant? So we know that the file was downloaded via HTTP, and we can see that it was requested up here, and the file name is tkraw_protected99. What is the MD5 hash of the downloaded file? Now we can do this 2 ways. We can do this via PowerShell. Because we did extract that file, we can type in get-file hash. But this time we'll specifically mention the algorithm as MD5. And then we get our MD5 hash. The second way of doing it is looking at virus total. Let's copy the SHA-256 hash. Click on details. I would find the MD5 hash right here. So we can copy that out and paste that in to our answers. What software runs the web server that hosts the malware? Okay, let's go back into our HTTP traffic, and we want to look for the software that the server responded with. And I see that there is a server Lightspeed, so we can go ahead and copy that out and hit submit. Perfect. If we don't know what Lightspeed is, we can type in Lightspeed web server, and we see it is an Apache alternative. What is the public IP of the victim's computer? This we can take a look at SMTP. If you recall, we did see a public IP of 173.66.146.112 and paste it in. In which country is the email server to which the stolen information is sent? I'm guessing this question is asking where is the email server located? We do know that the email server had an IP address of 23. something. So let's take a look at it. So 23.229.162.69. Again, if you were taking notes, you can find that in your notes. I'll use a different resource called ipinfo.io, and then I'll paste in the IP address, and we can see the country is located in the US. So the United States. Type in United States. Question 19, analyzing the first extraction of information. What software runs the email server to which the stolen data is sent? We can take a look at the SMTP traffic, and then we see that there is a software called XM 4.91. This is going to be it, I believe. Question 20, to which email account is the stolen information sent? Head back over to our SMTP traffic, and we see sales.del@macwinlogistics.in. So I'll go ahead and copy that out. What is the password used by the malware to send the email? Again, to find this, we can copy the password, head over to CyberChef. I'll just add a new input for now, and then throw that in there. And our password is sales@23 with a capital S. Sales@23. Which malware variant exfiltrated the data? Ooh, malware variant. So if we go back into our CyberChef, if you recall the subject line, or at least in this content, it shows us as well, we see Hawkeye keylogger -reborn v9. So this is likely the variant of this Hawkeye keylogger. So I'll just type it in, reborn v9. What are the Bank of America access credentials? Username, password. Let's take a look at our content. Scroll down over to Bank of America, and we see that the username is roman.mcguire with this super trusty password. So I will go ahead and paste that in. And the password itself. Nice. And the last question, how many minutes does the collected data get exfiltrated? Well, we know that the same contents were exfiltrated twice. We can take the first time and then subtract it from the second time the content was exfiltrated. So if we go back over to our PCAP file, we can right-click Follow TCP Stream and then select the contents. We see that the content was exfiltrated on packet 3196 at 20:38:16. So then we can also see that it shows a data fragment. So let's go back and filter for SMTP and then look for the next data fragment that is not under 203816. And then here is the next data fragment at 204821. So that's about 10 minutes. And out of curiosity, if I were to scroll down just a bit, we see another data fragment at 205825. So it seems to be happening every 10 minutes. So let's go ahead and type in 10 and hit submit. Perfect. We just completed this together. Hopefully you have learned a lot from this video and are becoming more confident in your ability in performing network analysis from a PCAP. If you aren't aware, I am in the middle of creating a course. And if you enjoyed this level of detail and instructions, then you will absolutely love my course. This course is going to be tailored for those who are wanting to become a SOC analyst and also for those that are already in the SOC and just want to level up their skills. You can sign up for the waitlist by clicking on the link down below. That is it for the video, and I hope you found that informative. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button and subscribe if you want to. Remember to stay curious and do things differently.